Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Darwin Telemaque is one of the Caribbean's most respected authorities in transportation, logistics, and port management, with more than a decade at the helm of the Antigua and, the other one part. It's missing on my, there's a typo here. I think whoever typed this thing needs to be fired. But you guys know. It was an audience engagement experiment. The Port Authority, he has led the transformation of the St. John's Port into a modern, technologically advanced hub capable of berthing 3 cargo vessels, 5 cruise ships simultaneously, a benchmark redevelopment widely regarded as the first of its kind in the region. His leadership extends beyond national borders. Mr. Telemaque serves as a vice chairman of the International Committee of Ports, not only just the International Committee of Ports, but also of the OAS, the chairman of the Port Committee of the OECS, and chairman of the Port Management Association of the Caribbean. Through these roles, he has championed international best practices, operational excellence, and regional integration that strengthens the Caribbean's economic resilience. And beyond that, he has a vision for our African collaboration. And so it is timely that he comes to this stage to give you his ideations. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce no one less, no one more, but the one and only Darwin Telemaque.
Thank you. I hope that's not in my time. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll try to be really quick, but I'm going to focus on a very narrow angle. We spoke about connecting, and my esteemed leader of Caribbean Export, my dear friend, just mentioned a while ago that the connection ought to happen. Well, we are already connected. It's a very ugly connection between Africa and the Caribbean, but I think there has been some extreme blessings that has come out of it. The Bible does say in all things give thanks.
Give thanks, yeah.
And we are grateful for the exposure we had on that side of the world. If you look on the screen, I'm going to speak about terminals. Port terminals. I am concerned that, first of all, in the Caribbean, we control our terminals, most of our ports. Some of our ports are smaller, some of us are global ports. One of the dynamics we realize is that our ports are our gateway. If we're trading, imports, exports, our ports drive that which is extremely vital to us. I remember stepping into Antigua Port Authority, and when we started off in 2012, it was a dismal space, very inefficient, low productivity. And without charging any more to the customers, we took a port from $19 million a year to averaging 4 or 5 years later, $70 million, just cleaning up the inefficiencies that existed. There were a few unhappy people, but when you are led by the right intentions and you govern properly, great things can happen. Yeah. I think one of the biggest errors in our development globally, and I don't speak of Africa separated from the Caribbean, speak of us as Africans, black people, is that we don't own terminals. Africa doesn't own its terminals. Your terminal gives you power, and what I want to show, I think I'm going right. Am I going right? Yes. Is I want to share something with you. My friend from Blue Maho mentioned something. Yes. Mentioned something earlier. It was Donald Trump became president. What was the first thing he said, if you remember? I want the canal back. Now, why would the most powerful man in the world speak about a little canal in a small country? Oh, it's because ports, shipping are the two most critical things in your existence. Because if you need something, it has to be brought to you. And if you make something to go someplace else, it has to be taken there. What was happening in the United States? Inflation, there was issues in the Red Sea, there was problems in the Strait of Malacca, ships had to go all around the Horn of Africa, extending the time. Trump quickly realized that his exports and imports into the United States, people with cruise ships, costs had gone up going through the canal. Exporting LNG to Asia was becoming more expensive as it went through the canal. And the first thing he said, if I want to bring inflation down, is I have to address the issue of that canal. Lots of people heard him say, well, I'm going to take it back. And you don't just go in someone's country and take what they have. And his intention was different, not necessarily taking it back, but it had to be restructured and brought into U.S. control. You have to control your assets. And I'm going to show you something that is of some concern to us in the region, because we need Africa to lead in specific areas so that they can come back and strengthen us. We have some areas to help, but we want to point out that in a little bit. So there are no major terminals. AGL is African Global Logistics, correct? Do you know that company? Who owns it? MSC, Mediterranean Shipping. Where are they from? Italy. Something that started is now foreign owned again. If you go down to the port in Tanzania, and one of the new owners of that port is Adani out of India, who has extended his port global dominance to now is targeting Africa. So my presentation really is, how do we become one of these? PSA is the largest terminal operator, one of them in the world. That's Port Authority of Singapore. You have Hutchinson's. You can read their names. And I want you to read it so that you understand what is happening. Look at the volumes they move. And those are not shipping lines. Those are just port terminals. These are owned in some cases by private individuals, some owned by companies that are state supported. But by any means necessary, if you go to Africa, you're going to find some of these players at your ports. What you will not find is one that's owned, operated by Africans. And so we will look at the volumes, then look at the profits. The profits ends with a B behind them as well. There is a lot of money in the port business. There are very few of us who are engaged in it. And what's true about the Caribbean is in the Caribbean, you have a bunch of Africans who have learned how to do this business very well. And I think one of the things we can export to Africa, when you go to Kingston, for example, where we have one of the largest transshipment port in the Caribbean, in the world actually, coming from the Panama Canal, is the capacity and capabilities to operate terminals. We want to actually look to see how we can transpose some of our expertise to help build some capacity on the continent of Africa. We're going to be bold and say we need to change the fact that none of these names represents anything that we see on the ground. Now, why am I saying this? Your port starts off with a local community. It's not the big names that starts off. It's just a government-run port in Angola or Mozambique or Kenya or Ghana. And then one day someone shows up with a briefcase that says, we can do it better. Why is that? It's because there are some investment portfolios that we shy away from or we're not venturing into. And these areas are the ones that are crucial to us because that's the ports that feed us. That's the ports we rely on getting our food, clothing, and shelter from. Why are we running away from it? Why are our children only the stevedores and the line handlers? Why are they not up in the boardroom looking down on what's happening? That's on our continent, the only continent in the world that doesn't have a major global terminal operating company is Africa, and we need to change that. There is no way that we can speak of infusing our influence when we don't own the ships. By the way, I don't have a lot of time to get into this, but if you go into the ships that sail to and from Africa, there are one of two countries in Africa that has bought ships their own flags, I think Ethiopia has a very good line, a few others, but there are no global players. When you examine the reality from Africa, you're still served by CMA CGM, which is France, Maersk Lines, which is Denmark, MSC, which is Italy, Hapag-Lloyd, which is Germany. What is consistent with that? The same people who carried the cargo from Africa out to the world are the ones that control the trade. They control the routes. So you know why you trade with who you trade with? Because you don't own the routes. You don't determine the routes. Everything is presupposed. Why can't you get markets to move the needle from 0.0 from the Caribbean? Because you have no routes. That's not of interest to those who design the global routes. So we've lost the ships. But for God's sake, the land is ours. The dock belongs to us. Why are we giving it away? Let's build the capacity so that these billions that are leaving the shores, going to UAE, they don't need any more. So don't give them any more ports. All right? We ought to keep that. And what do we need to do that? We can get into some areas here. I highlighted some items here in my presentation, but I know I'm rushing a bit, and I don't want to get too far into the presentation. I'll leave it for you, because I see a 2-minute handler. Here's what I'll say. I wish they would give you more time, but they gave me 2 more minutes. Many conferences are set up to speak. We don't want to speak. We just heard that from my esteemed leader of the Caribbean Export Agency. No more speaking. Action time. Folks, you may not even need to do a whole lot except sit with your leadership, get an understanding of what is required, and we can come in. I worked for quite a few years at the World Bank as a port modernization expert. I went around the world doing this. I am a West Indian African, ready to help make Africa stronger. I said this in Grenada at the African conference about 4 months ago. Why did I say that? There were 7 heads of African states there. Because you have to strengthen your own capacity, Africa, so you can help us. And the easiest way to do that, to build a link, is not by some idea in our heads. We have to literally touch each other. Things have to move. You make things that we need, we can't get it. We have things that you need, you can't get it. If we want to ship something from Africa right now, it has to go from South Africa, I'll give you a direction, straight to Brazil. That's a long way. Then come from Brazil, go to Cartagena in Colombia, and then ends up in Caucedo, Santo Domingo, before it lands in Antigua, and then on to the other islands that it needs to get to. That could take 60 days. Well, we can't trade and live that way. Ridiculous. That's just shipping. But that sounds ominous. Think about 4 million TEUs coming into 3 countries in Africa, and all the money being made at your port on your dirt is going to Hutchinson's in Hong Kong, MSC in Italy, DP World at the UAE, Costco in China, PSA in Singapore, and all the other names. When in fact, all we need are 5 things to do this. First, we need to modernize our ports so that they actually reflect what is an efficient infrastructure. And the efficiency of the infrastructure has to be scaled. I enjoyed our development expert's presentation earlier, speaking about ways in which we need to move. This is one where I think you don't see black people like me at the helms of shipping companies or even port authorities. We're not given that opportunity. I was lucky that I got a chance at a shipping company, and I remember a little story that I told. My president at the time went to court with me. You know why he came to court? Because we were sued for being a racist company. And when he came into the room, I didn't even notice. When the judge started asking him to speak and said, "What is your name?" He said, "Rick Morrell." And he can hear this. And then she said, where were you born? He says, "I am African American." He's a white guy. And I looked at him and said, "What did Rick just say?" He was born in Kenya. The case was thrown away. How can I be racist to my people, he said. I thought that was fascinating. But the point I'm making is, if we think critically, we are being controlled on a space that we own. our governments need to be told that we can do differently. This is an area where many countries don't venture into because we do not have the skill sets, or so we think. But I think we do. If we went to countries like in Trinidad and Tobago, where we have significant, well-trained development port systems, we have the same in Jamaica. I am here putting it all together. We can easily sit down, get some investments, put it together. We can start with one of the small ports in Africa. In a year, we can have 2 ports. Blue Maho, let's talk. We can have a few more discussions about another port in a small space. We don't need the big ones. Guess what? When DP World started in the UAE, it was only a small little country. DP World, if you go to the chart, is going off the charts with revenue from port operations, just port operations. MSC is now teaming up with BlackRock. BlackRock is the largest company in the world. Why are they teaming up? Because terminals are crucial. And as terminals become more crucial, Africa, we need to stop giving them away. One of the things that's true about us in the Caribbean, and I'll close here, is we haven't given away our terminals yet. But they're coming for it. Well, we want the people that come to be the next group that formed 5 or 6 terminal operations in Africa. And because we have that in Africa, every government in the Caribbean will welcome you to come strengthen our side. And you see, once that links has happened, and you go port to port, it's your port. You can now make it happen. The world begins to close up because that divide where they've taken shipping, taken the terminals, and keeping us apart, we can reconnect. And we can do so by something that we own. Let's take our terminals back. You can look through this. I think it's self-explanatory. But I'm not saying this for wanting to say good words. Maybe some of you may not even be the right audience for this, but you can take this message to some people, take my card, give it to them, let's start having a discussion. This is really why I came here. Stir up the discussion, because you won't believe the revenue you can generate from these terminals. Stop letting them just be this. How many of you have driven past your ports in your country? Yes, and you wonder, what is that? Guess what? Every Arab, every Adani executive, every MSC executive is watching gold while we watch the mess. We can clean it up ourselves. We can make it better so we can keep that revenue for us. If you want to do it, meet with me somewhere. Let's talk about that. Thank you very much.
Incredible. This conference is not about talking, it's about doing. That's what I love. This is progress. The challenge has been made. Come and meet.